Welcome back for chapter 3 of our story, School's Out. Remember our main character, Lucas, the big brother? He had two little brothers. They were born on the same day. They were twins. Do you know anyone who has a twin? Maybe a twin brother or a twin sister? Sometimes twins can be hard to tell apart, and that's what today's chapter is about. Chapter 3, Which is Which? A few days after Genevieve Lamont arrived, Julio rode his bike over to Lucas' house. The twins were playing on the swing set in the backyard, and Lucas was watching them. It was Genevieve's day off. I want you to teach me which is which, said Julio. What do you mean, which is which? Asked Lucas. Your brothers. They look the same to me. But you always know which is which. What's the trick? It's not a trick, said Lucas. I've been trying to show Genevieve the same thing. Look, you can tell by their freckles. Freckles are tiny little marks on your skin. Then he pointed to the back of his brother's chubby leg. Look, Julio, see? Marcus has a freckle on the back of his knee. Even though they are identical, Marius doesn't have a freckle there. Hey, that's great, said Julio, smiling. He thought for a minute. Then he said, but how can you tell them apart when they're wearing long pants? Now it's summer, so they have shorts on, but in the winter, how do you know which is which? You can't see the freckle on his knee then. Easy, said Lucas. He helped Marcus back onto the swing and gave him a push. Marius has a freckle too. It's behind his ear. Julio nodded his head. Okay, he said, I can remember that. What happens if he gets dirty? What do you mean? Asked Lucas. He always gets dirty. If your brother gets dirty, you can't see the freckle behind his ear. It doesn't matter, said Lucas, shrugging his shoulders. I can tell freckles. But how? I don't know, said Lucas. I just know them. After all, they are my brothers. It's weird that they're so much alike, said Julio, studying the twins closely. What do you think it feels like? I don't know, said Lucas. He'd often wondered about it himself. How would it be to have a brother who was just his age and looked just like him? Would the brother do everything he did? When he woke up in the morning, would he ever be confused about who he was and who his brother was? I have an idea, said Julio. Let's see if we can find other ways they are different, besides freckles. Like what? Asked Lucas. Julio thought for a minute. Which of you guys can jump up and down the longest? He asked the twins. He started jumping up and down to demonstrate. Marcus and Marius both got off the swings and began jumping. They thought it was a new game. Lucas and Julio watched until one of the twins stopped. Okay, you're the winner, said Julio. He looked behind the knees of both boys. Marcus wins, he said. He jumped the longest. You got confused, said Lucas. It was Marius who jumped the longest. Marcus has the freckle, but Marius jumped longer. Julio was not discouraged. We should write this all down. That way we won't forget. Could you get a piece of paper? I'll think of another contest. Lucas went inside the house and returned with a pad of paper and a newly sharpened pencil. It was one of his prize pencils for Mrs. Hockaday. How about running? Which twin runs the fastest? Asked Julio. They lined up Marius and Marcus. When I say to run, you should both run to the fence, said Lucas. He pointed to the wooden fence that divided their property from their neighbors. They turned around and come back to me. Okay? Marcus and Marius nodded. They liked these new games. 1, 2, 3, go! Shouted Julio. The twins stood looking at him. Why aren't you running? Asked Lucas. You didn't say it, said Marius. Lucas grinned. I taught them how to play Simon Says. I guess they think this is a game called Lucas Says. He turned to his brothers. Okay, run! The twins started off. Marius tripped on a tree root and fell. I got a boo-boo, he said. He went over to Lucas so that his big brother could rub the spot. We'll have to do it over, said Julio. By the end of the afternoon, they'd made a full chart. Longest jumper, Marcus. Fastest runner, Marius. Eats the most cookies, Marius. Gets dirtiest, that was a tie. Hops longest on one foot, Marcus. Longest clapper, tie. Loudest voice, tie. If I study like this, when I study things for school, I'll probably know all about your brothers, said Julio. Probably by the next time I come to play with you, I'll be able to tell them apart just like you. No, said Lucas, you'll have to ask them to jump or hop or something. I know who they are when they're standing still or sleeping or anything. When they're sleeping, it doesn't matter which is which, Julio declared. I wonder if Genevieve will be able to tell them apart by the end of the summer, said Lucas. And the boys doing all the contests. I better leave this chart for her, Julio said as he got ready to go home. She has a real tough job. Which boy is the most trouble? Lucas asked his parents the next evening, Marcus or Marius? It would be another thing to add to Julio's list. They both know how to horse around equally well, said Mr. Cott. Horse? How can they be a horse? Asked Genevieve. They don't walk on their hands and feet. This was another example of how, even though she seemed to understand English so well, some expressions were new to her. I mean that they are both wild and noisy, Mr. Cott explained. Genevieve removed the little notebook from the pocket of her jeans. Hardly a day passed when she didn't learn a new word or phrase. Yesterday, Lucas had taught her fat chance and about acting chicken. Was I as bad as Marcus and Marius when I was little? Lucas asked. Today had been a particularly trying day for Genevieve. The twins had been playing happily in the plastic wading pool in the backyard 1 minute, and the next minute Marcus had climbed out of the pool and taken off his little swimming trunks. While Genevieve was putting the trunks back on Marcus, Marius climbed out of the pool and took off his trunks. Mrs. Cott related to her husband, and then he ran down the street with nothing on. Genevieve found him all the way down at the corner. It's good that he knows he must not cross the street, said Genevieve. Otherwise, he would have gone even farther. Did I do things like that when I was little? Asked Lucas. He couldn't remember being 2 years old. You never took off your clothes and ran down the street, said Mrs. Cott, but I'll never forget the incident with the little men. Who are the little men? Asked Lucas. You were a bit older than Marcus and Marius. I guess you must have been 4 years old. You had just gotten a new pair of scissors, and you liked cutting with them. I gave you an old magazine, and you cut out pictures of cars and babies and things like that. Next thing I knew, you had gone to my pocketbook and taken out my money. I found you sitting on the floor, busily cutting out the little men. What little men? Asked Genevieve. The little men on the money, said his mother. Lucas didn't know their names at the time. One little man was George Washington. The other little man was Abraham Lincoln. Could you still spend the money? Asked Lucas. It was funny to think that once he had been just as bad as Marcus and Marius. In fact, it sounded to him as if he had been as naughty as his two brothers together, even though he was only one. I took all the pieces to the bank, and they let me exchange the money. The teller at the bank suggested that I take all my money in quarters because then you wouldn't be able to destroy them. Did you? Said Lucas. No, said Mrs. Cott. The many coins would have been too heavy. So I took home dollar bills and learned to be more careful around you. Now you have to be more careful with Marcus and Marius, said Lucas. That's the end of today's chapter. Think back to a time when you were little, maybe 2 or 3 or 4. Did you do something that your mom or dad thought was naughty? See you next time for chapter 4.